April 1st, okay?
April 1st, April Fools.
April Fool's Day. So just be ready, folks. We got a lot to talk about.
I got my shirt on.
Brendan's wearing his liquor shirt. It's called the Nightcap from Acres Down South. And,
it's funny. That's what they call me. That's my nickname, the Nightcap.
The Nightcap. There you go.
Or the Later Gator.
The Later Gator.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm going to tell you what. I watched a lot of basketball. We all did over the weekend. A lot of really good basketball. We're going to talk about it. We got Tommy Kane riding with his good friend and close confidant, Mr. Wolf. Said he's on his way to go do some serious bass fishing the next few days.
Nice.
And we're going to find out where he's going. Kevin Scarbinsky will check in from Birmingham. And Franz Beard from Gainesville. Just another day in paradise. Okay, smash the subscribe button in the bottom right-hand corner. Hit allow notifications on your Android device or iPhone. That allows you to get alerts every time we do a show. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell everybody about SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU.
Yeah.
We should be launching that Texas podcast.
Big podcast this week. We're launching.
Yeah, good deal. That was a lot of fun with your dad and Ken Caps. Hook 'em horns.
Oh my God! Look at that. I don't even know how that happened. I don't even know why you have that. I have no idea how that just happened on your thing. All right.
I don't either. I don't. After this morning's, Audrey's not here today, so I was like, I'm running the show from my end myself, and I was like, there we go. But we got it because we've got a great pilot. So we're at 41,000 feet, man. Check it out.
Check it out. All right.
We'll
Get your pen and paper. We'll be right back.
Sidelines with Rob Brown. Talk sporty to me.
Riding on the city of New Orleans. I can say this one. Mr. Wolf is in the car. Tommy, I was listening. I get so wound up. I had to go for a hike on the St. Francis River when I got back over from Memphis from going to Mass for Easter Sunday yesterday. And I had to listen. Let me tell you what I did. There's this thing, this app, and it was like the Duke broadcast team and the NC State broadcast team. And I was like, this is weird. So I'm listening to the Duke guys, and in between, oh my God, in between whining about every call, I can see why people get annoyed with these people. I mean, it was like they whine. I'm like, is this a broadcast team or a wine and cheese party? It was. Then they get to the NC State deal, and I love that one. You can paint the bell tower red tonight in Raleigh because the Wolfpack are going to the Final Four. And I listened to the last 7 minutes of the game on the Wolfpack radio network, and I was going, man, God, that was awesome. I mean, I can remember. Radio broadcast crews are awesome to listen to. Watch it on TV, but sync your radio to where you can watch and listen to it. But first off, congratulations, Wolfpack going to the Final Four. This is awesome. 9 games now in the single elimination tournament, and Kevin Scarbinsky's in with us. But paint the bell tower red tonight in Raleigh, North Carolina. Explain to all of the free world and the not so free world exactly what paint the red bell tower means, because that was awesome. Might want to reboot. You sound like we're not hearing you. We're getting a little R2D2 noise. See if we can reboot and come back.
Might be Bluetooth or something, or you look good. There you is.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Oh wait, now you're back to the little.
It's R2D2. All right, let's try to reboot so we can get the audio, because we were hearing you fine just a minute ago.
Yeah, I think it's probably the mobile. Hey, Kevin Scarbinsky's here though.
Did Pottsville win that game last night?
Sounded like Alvin and the Chipmunks. I think Tommy's been celebrating by sniffing helium.
I tell you what, Kevin, isn't this why we love the Final Four? And I don't want to steal any of the thunder from Kane Thomas, but with that game, Tommy, are you back with us?
Can you hear me?
Absolutely. Tommy, can you hear me? Let's talk about Paint the Bell Tower Red tonight in Raleigh, and we'll take it from there. And I'll let you and Kevin start just going back and forth.
I mean, Rob, I can't even begin to tell you what yesterday. I mean, first of all, like, the most important day of the year, right? Easter Sunday.
Yes,
I mean, let's just
absolutely.
get that first and foremost. But when you pile that on top of NC State's women going to the Final Four and when capturing that punching that ticket, and then watching the NC State men do it again. Like, I've been a State fan my entire life, right? You guys know all that since 4 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't normal for NC State ever. It's not normal for anybody, but I keep waiting for us to become NC State, that we were the 17 and 14 team going into the ACC tournament. I'm waiting for that 17 and 14 team to show up, and they just don't exist anymore. And I'm drinking the Kool-Aid now. I'm like, these guys they're legit. Like, they're playing at a clip that is just, it's what dreams are made of. I mean, it literally is. And they're capturing, just like they did in '83, they're capturing the hearts of America, because they're an 11 seed in the Final Four. They got a dynamic team. They've got this player in DJ Burns that is just literally a man-child on the court. And I mean, it's just a beautiful thing to watch. And it was, so when they light the bell towers, our iconic monument on the NC State campus, and when every time there's a big NC State victory in any major sport, they light that thing red, and then everybody from the whole campus comes around to the bell tower, has a good old time, and
I love it.
It's just awesome. It's just awesome.
Well, Kevin, I mean, you were watching it, and I was just telling Tommy, I got so wound up when I got back from Memphis. I went over to Mass at St. Louis yesterday. I was listening to this dual broadcast of the Duke radio play-by-play and the NC State play-by-play. And they went to the NC State broadcast crew in the last 7 minutes of the broadcast. And it was just so powerful to listen, because they made it so personal for NC State as they were rolling along and just dominated in the second half, shot 65 or 70% from the field, I think.
Special is to hear it through the voices of the local broadcast team that follows that team, that has followed that team in many cases for years and years and years. And then you have incredible stories there, like Alabama with their play-by-play voice, Chris Stewart, who almost lost his life, who was in dire straits from a health perspective on a number of occasions in recent years. And just beyond that, never thought he would see this day when Alabama got to a Final Four, despite all the success that program has had through the years.
Right.
And so to hear his story, and Ernie Johnson did a beautiful job with it on Saturday evening, telling Chris's story, and then to get to hear Chris make that call as the clock wound down, as they punched their ticket to their first Final Four. And one of Chris's signature phrases, it started with the Alabama-Texas A&M game a couple of years in football, where he says, "Let's get out of here." And he said, "Let's get out of here and go to the Final Four." It just gives you chills. I've known Chris since he was almost barely out of college at University of Montevallo, south of Birmingham. So for people like him, Brian Passink, who was a walk-on, and I covered Brian Passink in a tournament, in a holiday tournament in Oakland, California, about 30 years ago. And now he was a part of great teams with teammates with great players. Alabama's had so many. So to see that kind of story just happen and unfold before your eyes, to see what NC State is doing, and is there going to be a heavier sentimental favorite than NC State against Zach Edey and Purdue. The universal hatred of Zach Edey has reached unprecedented levels, and everybody is going to be an NC State fan outside of the Purdue fan base on Saturday.
That's
when
right.
They meet in the semifinals.
Yeah,
well, I'll tell you what, too,
yeah.
Kevin. But on the same note with the play-by-play guys, our play-by-play guy Gary Hahn announced his retirement with about 10 games to go in the season.
Wow.
He's been the voice of the Wolfpack for 40 years. I mean, he was there when I was there. He was calling the games when I was back there in the early 90s. And so he is. I mean, what a ride he's been on. Like, he's probably thinking, okay, I'll call a game or two in the ACC tournament, and I'll hang it up. But he's been the voice of the Wolfpack for decades, and now he's in the Final Four as the voice of the Wolfpack. It's just a great story all the way around. But I love the play-by-play guys in college basketball because, like you said, they're so intimately part of that team that their passion rings true when they call those games.
Yeah, well, I would say this too, as someone who is a AM radio junkie, because we're all lucky. We grew up with that. And like I ran into Dave Brown about 3 weeks ago at Costco in Memphis. Dave Brown and Lance Russell did Saturday morning studio wrestling on Channel 5 in Memphis. And Dave was the longtime weatherman, chief meteorologist at WMC TV5. And I said, Dave, God, we miss you. I said, just one more Saturday of you coming out there with Jimmy Hart and Jerry Lawler and, Jackie Fargo. You get attached to these people, but listening, Kevin, to that broadcast, to the NC State radio crew, of course, I grew up, listening, going way back with radio with Auburn. You think of Jim Fife, you think of Rod Bramlett, and before that, you had, Gusty Year Out, Gary Sanders, and Alabama, John Forney. There goes Stedman Shealy. This brought to you by Bromberg Jewelers. But I was thinking about this too. Now, I'm an Auburn grad, but I was happy I have a lot of Alabama friends. I've remarried. I have a fourth child now, Mallory, who's an Alabama grad, still a good person. Love her. I have so many Alabama friends, and I'm texting them during the show, and we have these texts all over the place. We fish together. We hunt together. Man, when you make it to the Final Four, it is like you just got the greatest news you've ever had as a sports fan. I mean, where do you start writing about this? Somebody write about it.
Well, that's one of the great parts about this is you're still 2 wins away from a national championship. But no matter what happens this coming weekend, you have accomplished something. You have set yourself apart. You will, especially in the case of this Alabama team, because no Alabama team had ever reached the Final Four, and only one before this year had reached the Elite Eight, which is mind-boggling when you look at the historic success of Alabama basketball. And it is really this overall, if you don't count national championships or Final Fours, it's the second best program in the history of the SEC behind Kentucky. And so for a program that has had so much success, but they've never had that ultimate success, it's all gravy from here. Nobody expects them to beat UConn, but nobody expected them to beat North Carolina. Nobody expected them to get to Phoenix to the Final Four. So it's almost perfectly appropriate that this team, not the team last year with Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney, 2 first-round draft picks, maybe the most talented team in Alabama history, certainly one of the best teams in Alabama history. They didn't get there. They were the number 1 overall seed in the tournament. But this team, in which so many guys left, guys turned pro, some wisely, some not so much. Hello, Charles Bediako. A bunch of guys transferred. Jaden Bradley, Arizona. He had to watch Alabama win as Arizona got beat. We could go on and on. But a small core of guys stayed. Three assistant coaches got head coaching jobs, so it's an entire new assistant coaching staff. And this team was 1 game out of first place in the SEC. They go 1 and done in the SEC tournament, and everybody writes them off and thinks it's over. And next thing you know, they're headed to the Final Four. Those are the best stories when you don't see it coming, and yet it comes just the same.
Tommy,
honestly, guys,
Christmas Day, it came just the same.
Alabama would be the story of the NCAA tournament right now if it wasn't for NC State, right? I mean, what they've done and what they're where they are, but NC State's because of being an 11 seed and just the crazy run they've been on. But yeah, Alabama's just been, I mean, what a great story there too. And you know, they're going up against the juggernaut UConn, who like hasn't even had a close game all year. But there's a lot of similarities. If you go back and look, the same people, they were talking about the same thing when they were talking to Houston in the Phi Slamma Jamma in '83. Everybody's like, oh, you can't beat those guys. They dunk on you all the time. They run up and down the court like gazelles. There's just no way they're unbeatable, blah, 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 blah. So, like, hey, I've said this before on the show, and I'll say it again. You got 5 athletes on the court versus 5 athletes. Anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Yeah, and I'll say this, Kevin, I'm going to give you credit. You're the one who said this on Sidelines several weeks ago. You said, you know, this might be the year, I believe it was you, that Alabama does it, because last year everything was stacked up for them to do it as the number 1 overall seed, and they don't do it. I tell you what, I remember saying this to Tennessee fans when Peyton was there. I said, you know, y'all will probably win the national championship a year or 2 after he's gone. Just watch what happens. And I'll never forget, Jamal Lewis breaks his kneecap going around right end in the Auburn game in '98 at Jordan-Hare. And they brought in a backup running back from Frostproof, Florida, home of a lot of orange groves, Travis Henry, who finished out the year, and they won the national championship with T. Martin from Williamson High School in Mobile. So, you know, who is the most lovable figure? I'm going to tell you what he is. He's a taller version of Charles Barkley. It's this J.D. Burns guy. Kane Thomas. Let's talk about this big guy. He started his career on the Hill in Knoxville, and he's just become, you know, you look at him and you go, what is this guy? Just, he takes up space? No, he's 29 points yesterday.
Yeah. DJ Burns is a special player. He is, first of all, he gets a lot of credit for his scoring and his touch inside, but he's got a really high basketball IQ. I mean, he really does. He knows when to be in the right position on the court. He knows when to hit the people cutting across the lane and cutting in diagonal passes. And he's just a good, smart basketball player. I mean, he had a great career at Winthrop. He went to, so you're right, he went to Tennessee first, and then transferred over to and played at Winthrop, and he was a freshman of the year, you know, newcomer of the year there, and then he was the player of the year of the conference there, and he was a heck of a player at Winthrop. I mean, he really was. And then we got him, and I mean, he's from right here in Rock Hill, you know, South Carolina, right outside Charlotte, and that guy has been a joy to watch. Let me tell you, and this is what I'll tell you about him. I've been watching basketball all my entire life. Was fortunate enough to play a little bit in college, all this stuff, you know, and cover and coach high school basketball for a long time. I've never been more excited when the ball gets entered into the post to see what happens. Like, when's the last time you say, I can't wait for him to feed the post and see what happens? I'd rather watch him. Right. I'd rather watch him do a dipsy-do spin move on Filipowski than watch just one of our guys, you know, go on a breakaway dunk. I'd rather watch him operate underneath. It's just a thing of beauty. And that is a lost art form in college, in all of basketball, right? Post play is just a lost art form. But that guy he's special. He's really fun. Yeah.
That's well said, Tommy. And in contrast, for Alabama, you know, their leader, their best player, maybe, and now you have to start talking about him as maybe the most accomplished player in Alabama history, and that's Mark Sears, who 4 years ago, actually 5 years ago, he was at Muscle Shoals High School in Northwest Alabama.
Yeah.
He was considered undersized. They list him at 6'1". I don't think he's 6'1". He wasn't a great shooter. He wasn't getting a lot of recruiting attention. So he went to Hargrave Military Academy, as many players do, try to get a little more exposure. His coach there went to Ohio U after that. So Mark got a scholarship offer at Ohio U. He goes to Ohio U, plays 2 years there. After his first year, he was okay as a freshman, didn't shoot it very well. And according to his count, made 15,000 three-pointers in the offseason between his freshman and sophomore years. Had a big year, took a big step forward as a sophomore. And then finally, after his sophomore year, he was good enough for Alabama. And 2 years ago, on April 7th, 2022, he posted on his Twitter, "I'm coming home." On April 6th, 2024, he will play in the Final Four. And he has been at the heart of everything Alabama does. He's an unbelievable shooter. He has scored more points in a single season than Robert Horry, Hollywood Robinson, Leon Douglas, every great player that's ever played at Alabama. They all look up at Mark Sears now. He's the engine. He makes them go. He didn't score for the first 16 minutes against Clemson. And then the last 24 minutes, he had 23 points.
Yeah.
He's
I'll tell you what, here's a story. Here's a story for us, Tommy and Kevin and Brendan and everybody. The matchup, Purdue has Zach Edey, one of the most repugnant and unlikable characters on a basketball court, who has an inferiority complex at 8'3". I didn't know the Yeti had a complex, but here's what we got. Here's the story. NC State with DJ Burns and DJ Horn and all these guys. It is the Rocky movie with Rocky Balboa versus Drago. Drago is Edey and Rocky is DJ Burns. Let's get it on. I love it.
Hey, man, I mean, I think you're going to have the whole country other than Purdue fans pulling for the Wolfpack just because of the emotional roller coaster that we've taken everybody on and the ride that we've taken them on. But it's going to be an interesting matchup. I mean, you know, that guy, did you see the pictures of him cutting down the net yesterday? He wasn't even standing on the ladder. He was just reaching his hands up and cutting the net down. I mean, it was just hilarious. And I mean, that's just a whole different ball game, man. I don't care how skilled you are in the post or whatever. You can't beat 7'4" with like that wingspan. But you know, hey, it'll be a great matchup. I mean, you know, the way our guys are playing, nobody in the country wants to play the Wolfpack right now. I'm gonna tell you that because you're just getting a team that is full of confidence, riding high. And I mean, look, we scored 21 points in the first half against Duke, and I was thinking to myself, the run's over. We don't look good. We look tired or whatever. We came out and ended up with 76 points in the game. I mean, we shot lights out in the second half. We just took it to a whole nother level. And, you know, I can't wait to play Purdue. Like, look, at this level, you're going to play the best of the best. You're in the Final Four. You're going to play the greats that are in college basketball. That's why that makes this tournament so awesome. And if you beat them, then you have all the right in the world to say, I'm the best. And that's what this tournament is all about. And it's just I just wish it wasn't only like 3 weekends. I wish it went on for like 10 weekends.
Well, you know, the coolest thing about it is that NC State was an 11 seed. And in the Sweet 16, 8 of the seeds were 1 or 2s. And then you got this number 11 out there. And I think the comment made by DJ Burns when Tracy Wolfson, who is so damn good at her job, asked him about what's different about the team. He said, you know, people aren't showing up late. They're showing up early. They're taking care of business both on and off the court. He goes, something clicked. And whatever it is, Kevin Scarbinsky, it's a great story.
Yeah, because, look, the basketball season is such a grind. You know, it starts, you start official practice in October, you start playing games in November, you go through Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, and you go all the way to Easter if you're fortunate. And you're going to have ups and downs. No team sails through a season, even the teams that have been undefeated. And we should remember, and I know Tommy does, and NC State fans do, UNLV was unbeatable and unbeaten in the 1991 Final Four when they were trying to go back-to-back. They lost in the semifinals to Duke. Kentucky was unbeatable and unbeaten in 2015 when they got to the Final Four. They lost in the semifinals to Wisconsin. So even for those teams that aren't considered unbeatable, there are ups and downs. It's all about pulling it together at the right moment. Yeah. And Alabama's another example of that. You know, and there's no better example on that team than Nick Pringle, who needed a number of attitude adjustments during the season. He had mini suspensions where he was put aside. He was separated from the team for a brief period of time. And what he did in that Elite Eight game against Clemson, he had a double-double, grabbed 11 rebounds, playing on almost 1 foot. He had a heel injury, which is so perfect because they beat the Tar Heels in the Sweet 16. He played through that heel injury against Carolina and Clemson, and was a huge factor inside for a team that doesn't have the size, doesn't have the power, doesn't have a DJ Burns, certainly doesn't have a Zach Edey, and yet they were very effective inside. But who can predict? That's the great thing about this, guys. Jaron Stevenson should be a senior in high school this year. He reclassified when Charles Bediako, who Alabama expected to come back, the 7-foot rim protector from last year, one of the reasons they were a top 3 national defense, when he decided unwisely to turn pro late, shocked the coaching staff. They weren't expecting it. So they needed another big. So they bring in Jaron Stevenson. He's not ready. He's too young and immature. He's too thin. And he had a very up and down season. He goes in the Elite Eight and hits 5 3-pointers. When nobody else was scoring, when Mark Sears didn't score for the first 14 minutes, 16 minutes, and Alabama fell down by 13 points, Jaron Stevenson helped keep him in the game. He shot a couple of air balls, but that's a great thing about Nate Oates. He doesn't care if you shoot air balls. If you take a shot when you're open, that's what he wants you to do, and he wants you to keep shooting. Jaron Stevenson did. He ended up with 19 points, 5 3-pointers. Again, these great individual stories that make up these great team stories.
Yeah. And and the funny thing is too, I mean, that speaks to his growth as a young man as well. I mean, you shoot an air ball in a big game like that, and the whole crowd's, cheering air ball, and then he comes back and he knocks down 5 3-pointers. Just the story right there all together. And another good story, don't forget, guys, on the NC State side, Kevin Keats was out of a job.
Yep.
His job was, ACC tournament, you win 1, maybe 2, and then you're, what we all expected would probably happen, and then he was probably going to get fired. And now wins the ACC tournament, gets a 2-year extension, gets all this bonus. Now he's in the Final Four. I have no idea what his bonus was for the Final Four, but I guarantee it was more than any of us make in a year. And, he was just like – and so this guy, I mean, what a great story there too. And I just love his demeanor. He doesn't have the arrogance about him. He doesn't have he's just all about the team, and he's just so – I mean, I think he's a believer, but I think he's amazed as well at what's going on and how well these guys are playing. And he really is just almost sitting back and watching his team make this magical run. And it's just a great story all the way around. And I mean, that's why we love college sports. I mean, we can talk all we want about the NIL and the transfer portal and how it's putting a black eye. But at the end of the day, when your team is doing something like this, or your Alabama stories or whatever, and having the juggernauts of UConn, I mean, it's the best reality TV there is. It's David versus Goliath, and you just can't beat it. You can't beat it.
Well, another thing we're talking about this tournament, I see people saying we should go to a 24-team playoff in college, 128 in basketball. This is what we love. And what we're hearing about NC State is about the team. You look at Kentucky, it's all about the stat sheets, and with their players getting that model that they were running on is dead. It doesn't work anymore. Now look, NC State's got guys in the portal. Look at DJ Burns. I mean, Tennessee, Winthrop over in South Carolina. Now he's at NC State. But it's a cool story. And then you've got the villain is going to be UConn. Danny Hurley, East Coast establishment, played at the University of New Jersey at Durham. It's all
No. That's his brother. That was his brother.
I'm sorry, Bobby.
That's Bobby. Yeah. Danny played at Villanova.
That's right. But now, I love Villanova. Great Catholic university there. And by the way, Jay Wright, he's so good on TV. You can see why players love playing for him. He built a culture that fit Villanova. Kevin, what do you think he's going to do next?
Well, I don't know, but let me go back to, again, another amazing story. So who was it? And we've got 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 former high school coaches in the Final Four. Danny Hurley coached in high school.
Yeah.
Kevin Keats was a high school coach. And obviously so was Nate Oates. And who gave Nate Oates his first opportunity as a college assistant? It was Bobby Hurley at Buffalo.
Oh, wow.
He got Nate Oates into the college game, and now Nate Oates is going to go against Danny Hurley, Bobby's brother, in the Final Four. It's just, I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. It is what makes this sport so special. And again, and then what Bucky McMillan did this year, what he's done for 4 years at Samford. It's great to see this spotlight shining on high school coaches. It just reminds us, sometimes the best coaching is done away from the TV cameras, not at the college level, not at the Final Four. It's done in January in a small town in Romulus, Michigan, where Nate Oates coached in high school.
That's right.
Where he's selling, they're selling slushies and donuts to raise money for the program. And you've got to do everything. You've got to learn every aspect of coaching. And then it's just a matter of getting that right opportunity. And Bobby Hurley gave that opportunity to Nate Oates, put him on his Buffalo staff. Then Bobby goes to Arizona State. Nate Oates becomes the head coach. He gets it done, and he gets the Alabama job. And Greg Byrne hiring Nate Oates, one of the smartest, most visionary hires in the history of SEC basketball.
Yeah, and here's another thing. Tommy, you talked about you're waiting for the other shoe to drop with NC State as they keep advancing. I heard it said by a wise man the other day, worry is just the absence of faith. And I bet your faith, it talks about that in the gospel so much, but it's so true what you said. You're so scared this is going to end. And, that's the psychology of sports. It says a lot about the duality of man, where we want to win so bad, but we're afraid to get too excited and too confident because of the pain of disappointment. But you know what? Another brilliant thing. I saw something on ACC Network last night talking about a TED Talk, the Virginia players. It was about an 18-minute TED Talk. It was right after they had lost to UMBC, the first time a 16 seed had ever beat a 1. Yeah. In the last 15 seconds of an 18-minute TED Talk, the speaker said, never forget that adversity and a tragedy can oftentimes lead you to the ticket to get where you never would have been able to get to otherwise.
That's right.
That's what UVA did. And, of course, I can remember as a kid listening to Ralph Sampson out of Harrisonburg, Virginia. But how hard it is to get where NC State is. And, Franz, you've covered a lot of basketball. Franz Beard, GatorBaitMedia.com joins us. We got a hell of a roundtable going here this morning. And, Franz, I talked about just getting to listen to the Duke and the NC State radio broadcast crews. And, by the way, that story, Kevin, about Chris Stewart was powerful. Just like the story that I saw on the SEC Network special about More Than a Voice, the great radio voices in SEC history, when Eli Gold said he and his wife went there for the final minutes of Rod Bramlett's life at UAB Medical Center after he'd been medevaced up there because he didn't want him to die alone. People don't know that kind of stuff. I don't personally know Eli Gold. Say what you want about him. I love the guy. I think he's a great announcer, and you probably had interactions with him, but there's so many great stories like that go on behind the scenes. And so yesterday Franz called me. I'm like, where are you? He goes, just another day in paradise. He was out there watching the Gators play baseball. Did you get a chance to watch any basketball yesterday? Or you probably stayed up and watched the rewinds?
I watched the basketball too. 50 years ago this past week, North Carolina State won the national championship. Monty Tal was the point guard. He lives here in Gainesville. He coaches to keep himself busy at Oak Hall High School, a little private school. He takes a bunch of little skinny white kids and goes up there and competes with the big boys and does rather well. But one of the really great teams in the week before, just days before, and this was when you had a smaller tournament. This is before the tournament expanded. David Thompson got hit at one end of the court and he got fouled, and the ref swallowed the whistle. He goes down the court. Billy Knight of Pittsburgh, who ends up having a really good NBA career, is about to lay the ball in, and David caught his toes on Billy Knight's 6'7" shoulders, does a flip under it, and it's happened like 2 feet in front of me because of the way the media sat. I was there in the end zone, and landed on his head. We thought he was dead. He wasn't. He comes back the next week with a patch on the back of his head where he had bled. And they beat UCLA in double overtime to end the 7-year win streak of national championships. the cover of Sports Illustrated that week shows David still up in the air, and he had blocked Bill Walton, and Walton is down below him, and the ball is somewhere between David's hand and Walton's head. Unbelievable photo. But the stories that you get at this time are remarkable because, David Thompson flipping over. I mean, think about this. A 6'7" guy, and he caught his toes on the guy's shoulder because he was mad because he didn't get blocked. So he got a little bit higher than normal and winds up doing a complete somersault, boom, like this, and lands on his head. Like the other thing I remember about that is Morris Rivers tried to save a basketball, and I'm there in the end zone. And thank goodness we didn't have computers in because mine would have been wrecked. And I caught him and I separated my shoulders. So I ended up having to play hurt in Greensboro the next week for the Final Four, And at the Final Four, Al got into a fist fight with one of his players Al McGuire got into a fist fight with one of his players in the locker room. They started screaming obscenities at each other. And the guy said he'd cut Al's throat. And Al said, "No, you won't." And he goes to the locker room, and Al went chasing after him. They got into a fist fight. Al won, and the guy played on Saturday.
Hey, well, you guys will appreciate this. So, friends, at 1974, I'm a 13-year-old kid in Pottsville, Pennsylvania, who loves basketball. And after David Thompson tripped over Billy Knight's shoulder and got hurt, and he had that wrap on his head. The next time I went to the playground, I wrapped gauze around my head. I was a big David Thompson fan, and I went to shoot buckets with the gauze wrap around my head. And everybody at the playground said, "What are you doing? What's wrong with you?" And I said, "I'm David Thompson." Now, my vertical was a little lower than David. But to bring it full circle, about 3 years ago, when my older son was visiting the University of Florida trying to choose his college, I met Monty Tao at Oak Hall. Dave Sturt, my old journalism professor in graduate school at the University of Florida, was good friends. His kids went there. So I got to meet Monty Tao, and I was like a kid. I was like a 13-year-old kid again, meeting Monty Tao, the point guard on that NC State team, undersized, almost invented the lob pass to David Thompson when you couldn't even dunk then because the dunk was outlawed. But that again, and I'm a lot older now, but I got excited to meet Monty Tao because I remember him from the Final Four in 1974.
In the semifinals of the regional, they're playing Providence, and Providence has Marvin Bad News Barnes, the guy who, honest to goodness, tries to hold up a convenience store in Providence. This is a true story. And he goes in wearing his Letterman's jacket, and stitched across the top of the big T, it says Marvin. The clerk says, "Marvin, you don't have to do this. This is all caught on videotape." Marvin says, "I ain't me. I'm somebody else."
Holy cow. I did not know that.
In that game, on the last play of the game, Tommy Burleson gets a rebound, tosses it to Monty. Monty's at midcourt, and he dribbles backward. He's walking backwards, 3 steps backwards, over the head heave, and it is a perfect alley-oop to David Thompson to end the game against Providence, which had Kevin Stakem on that team, and what a way to end a ball game. But my memories go back. This past week have just been, Monty and I've been texting, and we've just been flashing back and forth with that, Oh, well,
friends, it is though. And Tommy, hearing him talk about this, it's the history, the traditions, and the heroes. When you can tap into this stuff, that's what makes it worthwhile.
Oh, it totally is. I mean, NC State fans are still, 1983. I mean, it was one of the greatest, or arguably the greatest, in my opinion, run through the NCAA tournament of all time. What they did is coming in there with the losses they had, 10 losses, whatever. But I got to tell you guys, like, I mean, granted, they won the national championship on the dunk from Lorenzo Charles and the famous alley-oop that, with Derek Wittenberg still to this day, who claims it's a pass, but we all know it wasn't. But, that moment and those things that you develop is just like it's legendary. I was a 13-year-old kid, and it changes when you go. The other thing about it, guys, too, is when stuff like this happens with NC State or whatever, the kids that are watching this, the impact it has on their lives for the rest of their lives as a fan of that school or whatever. Like, I was 13 years old. I was 13 years old when NC State won a national championship. It changed my life and my desire for the love for the sport and everything else. And just, it was watching like a dream come true. And so what NC State's doing right now for the younger generation and for the recruits that are coming, down the road and everything else, it's a game changer. It really is. And it's just so stinking fun to watch because they're just a bunch of guys that they're having fun and playing good basketball. And it's a thing of beauty for even if you're not a State fan, it's a thing of beauty. I got Carolina fans. Yeah. I got more texts yesterday on my phone from Chapel Hill friends saying, please beat Duke, blah, blah, blah.
Absolutely.
And we're pulling for the Wolfpack. And it was just awesome. But it's been a great run.
Tommy, do me a favor, say it properly. You're up there in North Carolina. There is no such thing as Duke University. It's Duke. Beat Duke. Yeah. You go on the campus there. You go anywhere around the campus and you see somebody tall. You must play basketball. Yeah, I do for Duke. Yeah.
Well, you know what's really funny is to hear on the NC State radio broadcast say they'll be celebrating throughout the Tar Heel State. I mean, because that's their, it's the Tar Heel State, but that's the nickname of your hated rival, which is a mere 15 minutes away. Again, that's like putting Auburn, Alabama, and Georgia all 15, 20 minutes apart. I mean, Kevin, could you imagine? I would love to be a psychiatrist just to deal with all the people coming in to see you. But this is what is so cool. And I think any doubts about ACC basketball, I saw some, and I listened to the interviews on the post-game broadcast of the NC State Network, and they talked about that, just how much pride they have, Kevin, and is being part of the ACC. Look, it's been rough in football, maybe basketball, but, all this change going on. But, man, I love to watch ACC Network, SEC Network. When you look at that thing about the tournament in Greensboro, and like I said, my son Wilson lives in Charlotte, and he said, Dad, God, basketball's big up here. He goes, it's so big. Yeah. And Tommy, he took me to dinner. We were there back in early February. We went to lunch on a Sunday at Providence Road Sundries over there in Myers Park there in Charlotte. God, it's an incredible city. And Kevin, I think what we don't realize this, but in the state of Alabama, the state of Florida, the Gators got back-to-back in 06 and 07. Duke did it in 91 and 92. At that time, in 90, Duke was beaten by 30-something points by UNLV. The next year, they win it. But you're looking at the state of Alabama, 9 schools or 10, have every one of them been to the NCAA tournament at least once. What's happening now, if you're an Auburn fan, Alabama fan, again, I'm not so insecure that I can't pull for other schools because I know where my heart is, but also do a show, and I'm fair on the air. You got to be. But I get as excited watching the fans of these other schools get jacked up about what they're doing, I think, as they do. At least that's what my wife Mildred says. Maybe I'm crazy. Yeah. I am.
You could write a master's thesis or a PhD thesis on the reaction of Auburn fans to Alabama finally, after all these years, making its first Final Four. As one Auburn fan said, and poof, our one advantage on them is gone. Because Auburn, that was the only school in the state of Alabama that had ever been to the Final Four 5 tournaments ago. Of course, there was no tournament in 20 because of COVID. But that's amazing in and of itself. And, of course, Auburn fans, well, of course they got there. They got the easiest road ever. Their AD, Greg Byrne, set the bracket as if Greg Byrne was the guy who actually canceled in everybody. And you know what? It doesn't matter if you played seeds 1, 2, 4, and 8 to get there, or if you played double-digit seeds, you're in the Final Four. And I look at it from a larger perspective. In the last 5 NCAA tournaments, Auburn and Alabama basketball have reached the Final Four. That is pretty dang impressive for a state. We know the outsized importance of football here. In fact, I wrote in my column today in the Birmingham Lead, Alabama is an underdog on its Alabama basketball is an underdog on its own campus every day of its life, but they're going to the Final Four. So it's pretty impressive for what's happening around here. Again, there were 4 teams from the state in the tournament to see Alabama make this run. Alabama is not the one you would have expected to make this run. You would have expected it to be Auburn this year, but we were reminded again, and Franz, I think you said it last week, of the importance of guards, and more guards. Mm-hmm. And nobody has a better rotation of guards than Alabama, with not just Mark Sears, who's playing like an All-American, but Aaron Estrada, Rylan Griffin. Yeah. Those guys, they were the guys who came back Estrada came in as a transfer, but those Griffin came back from last year. Mark Sears came back from last year. And what they do, they play such a unique style that it's going to be very interesting. UConn, you think, look, and Tommy knows this, and so does Franz, North Carolina thinks it plays fast. It has a history of fast breaking and pushing the ball up the floor. You think you play fast until you play Alabama. And then you get a new definition of fast. Carolina was gassed at the end of that Sweet 16 game. Armando Bacot looked like he needed oxygen, like Akeem Olajuwon in the '83 Final Four in Albuquerque. Alabama plays a different pace. And yes, UConn is the monster. They're the best team we've seen in a long time. But on that one day, that's all it takes is for that. That's
all it takes. All somebody's going to do is
I'm saying it's possible.
Oh, it's totally possible. All somebody's got to do is get hot, and the other team has to struggle. I mean, it happens in basketball all the time. I mean, there were some runs yesterday that were just amazing to watch as far as, like, the scoring droughts and things like that. I mean, there was, like, one point in time, what game was I watching? I can't even remember now, but it was like a 30-0 run in a game. There was a 30-0 run in one of the games. UConn, thank you. Yeah, it was 30-0, and I mean, I was like, if that happens in any game, then all of a sudden anybody can beat anybody. It's just that's what makes college basketball so great. And we'll say it again: 5 athletes on the court versus 5 athletes, anything can happen. Somebody can get hot, somebody can have an off night, and the next thing you know, UConn's going home and Alabama's going to the final game. And it could very well be UConn. I mean, it could be Alabama and NC State. I mean, it could be. It really could be.
Well, here's the thing that people don't realize. When UNLV came back and played Duke in the second year, and I sat beside Tark in the semifinals in 2006. He sat beside me the entire game. And as he said, we came into that game and we looked and said, it's just Duke. And that's why, and he said, we had the team. He said, we should have beaten them. He said, we should have beaten them worse the second time around because he said we were better the second time around. But he said that first time we wanted a championship and we got it. The problem is, this is why so few teams repeat, because if you get back there the next year, you think, I did this before. Been there, done that. And that's why Florida's second run was so impressive. And you look at what they did in that second run. They beat 4 outstanding teams. You get past that first weekend, which is was nothing. But although I did have Matt Painter's mom sitting behind me in New Orleans, and that was unpleasant as it could be. I won't go into the details here, but it was not pleasant. Florida beats Purdue. Butler, a very good Oregon team coached by Ernie Kent and our band here at Florida. Thank goodness they carried on the tradition. They played the Mexican hat dance when Ernie Kent came walking on the floor. And in case you didn't know, Ernie had gotten caught having an affair with this woman in Tijuana. when he was allegedly recruiting in San Diego. So everywhere he went that year, they started at the University of Washington. They wore sombreros, and the band played the Mexican hat dance when he came on. But they beat Oregon, then they get in the semifinals. They get UCLA, and that UCLA team, Russell Westbrook's on it. You got a bunch of future pros. And then they beat Ohio State with Greg Oden in the championship game. Florida was seriously focused, but most teams that come back that next year are not.
Yeah,
it's very, very rare that they aren't. And Tark told me, he says, we should have beaten Duke. He said, we beat Duke by 30 the year before. He said, my team was so good, we should have beaten them by 50. And this is the thing, Tommy, that you got to look at, with the next game with North Carolina State. Everybody's going to pick UConn, But let me tell you what, if UConn comes there and says, been there, done that, they've lost 14 ball games, you never know what happens, because it only takes one team having an attitude for it to end.
Yeah. Tommy, you're talking about the Purdue NC State matchup. We've got about 10, 12 minutes left in the show. What is it going to take? Zach Edey is a monster. He had 40 points in that game, but they've failed a lot. They seem like they're on a mission, but NC State doesn't seem like they've got the burden that Zach Edey and Purdue seem to be carrying. I like a team that's loose between the ears versus one that I think they're really uptight, and I think NC State's fun style of play is to their advantage.
I think you're probably right, Rob. When I saw the line came out of Vegas right away, we were a 9-point underdog against Purdue, and I think what the difference is going to be the guard play, like you guys mentioned earlier. Guard play is going to be huge for us. The inside presence of Edey versus our guys. I mean, Ben Middlebrook's our backup center, the guy that comes in the court. He's a big bruiser guy. He's a strong physical kid. And I think he'll kind of be able to, waste some fouls on Edey and kind of really rough him up a little bit. DJ Burns, I don't know. We'll have to see. I think what you'll see DJ setting a lot more high screens outside the three-point line and kind of getting Edey away from the basket, to try to free our guards up to try to get to the hole without a 7'4" guy in the way. But we'll have to see how it plays out. I don't know. I don't know if Zach Edey's faced anybody like DJ Burns. Hell, nobody's faced anybody like DJ Burns in the tournament. I mean, you just don't know. You just between the strength and the size and the feathery touch and the quick feet, I don't think anybody can prepare for that. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think it's going to come down to our guards. We've got, our guards have got to hit some shots, and we got to just, continue to play. But I think you're spot on, Rob. Purdue's got this. We got to play. We got the player of the year. We got to win. We're supposed to win, whatever. NC State's like, hey, man, we won the ACC tournament. We're in the Final Four. We got nothing to lose. We're done. I mean, we've had a phenomenal season, better than anybody could ever imagine. Let's just go have fun. And there's something to be said for that when it comes to a Final Four game. There's all the pressure in the world's on Purdue, and it's not all on NC State. And I will have to say real quick, too, when you were talking about Danny Hurley earlier, I said Villanova, and I meant Seton Hall. He played at Seton Hall, not Villanova. I meant as soon as I said that, I knew that wasn't correct. But we'll see what happens. That's why we watched the game. And I bought it. Don't think I didn't get on. I got on Delta.com right away, and having lived in Atlanta for 30 years, had about 400,000 sky miles. I don't think I didn't book a flight right to Phoenix for next weekend, buddy.
Yeah, hey, you should. Hey, look, let me throw one to you, Kevin. Alabama now. First time ever at the Final Four. What's going through their head, the psychology of it's not enough. Okay, you can't get caught up in we made it to the Final Four. You got to be dialed in like a sniper, waiting for a target to pop its head up. And now let's do something that we're here. That matchup with UConn, they look invincible on paper, just like nobody in the world gave NC State a chance against Houston in '83. As Suge said one time in the Iron Bowl, Auburn was a big underdog against Alabama. said, "Coach, what do you think about your chances against Alabama Saturday at Legion Field?" Shug Jordan said, "Well, I seem to recall David was a 40-point underdog to Goliath. And how did that work out? We'll play the game, certainly." And as I do my best, Shug Jordan, Selma, Alabama, black belt of Alabama, deep South Southern drawl accent. "Kevin Scarbinsky from Pottsville, what do you know?" Let's go.
Well, there are a couple of advantages, I think, that Alabama has both physically and psychologically. They played UConn a year ago, early in the season, and UConn beat them by 15. And that was the team with Brandon Miller and Noah Clowney, Charles Bediako, et cetera. And Mark Sears was, he was the Robin to Brandon Miller's Batman. And now, of course, Mark Sears is Batman. So that idea, UConn's already beaten Alabama. So they, even though that was a very different Alabama team than this Alabama team. So I think that's a psychological edge for Alabama. And also, and this has not gotten enough play, Alabama, as well as they shot it, they made, I think, 15 threes against Clemson in the Elite Eight. Their best shooter did not play in the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. Latrell Wrightsell Jr., another transfer, has been maybe the heart and soul of that team in a different way than Mark Sears. Yeah. He's got a toughness about him. He's got a physicality about him. He's unfortunately suffered a number of head injuries this year. Concussions. I don't know if they've classified them as concussions, but something along those lines happened again in the second round. So he didn't play against North Carolina or Clemson. He's expected to be back. He is a very smart veteran basketball player. And that's what they have. Again, that guard group, you add him to Aaron Estrada, who's a wizard with his left hand, his bag of tricks. He scores in different ways. He's the only guy that Nate Oates lets shoot from the mid-range without getting scolded. Then, of course, Mark Sears and Rylan Griffin can hit it from the logo. You add that foursome, they are tough to deal with. And again, they play a style that's so different than anything else that you see normally. So there are some edges that Alabama has that, again, give them a chance. They can shoot it. They can shoot UConn out of its arrogance, out of its air of superiority, out of its, what have they've led every NCAA tournament game by 30 points at some point. That's insane. That's insane.
I think playing in a lot of close games makes you a better team because you don't get codependent on one individual or two maybe bailing you out of every situation. That is the beauty of having a tough schedule. And Alabama has experienced the pain and the misery of losing 10 games this season or 11, whatever it is. UConn last year had a 4 or 5 game losing streak in the season early on and came back. And you look at Tennessee. I put on Twix yesterday. That's what I call Twitter, Twix, Twitter and X, Twix. I put on there, once again, Tennessee loses a game where Dalton Knecht has a career night and he doesn't get enough support from the rest of his team. I mean, Vescovo was sick. He's had the flu or whatever, but I like what you just said about Alabama's chances against UConn. We're going to talk about it a lot this week, but Alabama shooting them out of their arrogance. Franz, kind of elaborate on what both Tommy and Kevin have said about these matchups. It's coming up this weekend.
Well, I'll give you two keys. One of them is for North Carolina State. Your guards have to be able to play in front of Edey and still be quick enough to get out there and defend on the three-point line. That's always the key. And this is you cannot beat Purdue playing behind Edey strictly. You have to have somebody who can front him. And the way to front him is with a guard who's quick enough to get back here and still get out and cover. There aren't many teams that can do that. And if the NC State's guards can do that, they'll be okay as far as that goes, as far as defending Edey. And the idea with Edey is you got to keep, there's two thoughts. One of them is let him just go crazy and defend everybody else. Or the second idea is hold him to say something, humanly, which is like, say, 21 points and 12 rebounds. If you can do either one of those two things,
wow,
you're okay.
yeah,
But you can't let him get. If he gets 30 points, you're sunk. Period.
Yeah.
Unless the whole goal is let him score his, and we'll defend everybody else, so there's no support. Kind of like yesterday, as Rob was saying, with Dalton Connect. Dalton Connect can make all the shots, but the rest of his team could not, and that killed him. Kevin is right about Alabama's guards. The one thing I will say about this is, for all the talk about the caveman Klinger or Corporal Klinger, who is enormous. I mean, they played here at Florida last year, and I got to tell you what, I stood beside him and felt like I felt like I'm a little kid. He's just so big. I mean, it's not just height. I stand next to a lot of tall guys, but I mean, this guy's just enormous. And the guys that beat you there are guys like Newman and Caravan and stuff like that. You've got to be able to defend them, because here's the one thing that they've got that nobody else does have. Alabama can beat anybody on a night when it is shooting well, and it has to shoot well. I made a comment last week that they had to have 15 threes. Well, they ended up with 12 in that ball game. They ended up with 16 Saturday, and that's why they won that one. So they can get hot and shoot themselves into and out of trouble.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to defend Caravan and Klingon down low, and they're going to have to defend Newman, who can absolutely slash and kill you slashing, because he can get to the line and foul you out. Newman is good to foul out two guys every ball game, just about. So, but Alabama, here they make you defend the entire perimeter. You end up with one guy in the middle, and if this guy cannot erase at the backboard, and he's not quick enough to deal with, all of a sudden, what Alabama does is very similar to a four corners approach almost. You got four guys on the perimeter, and you got one guy in the middle, and if the guy with the ball in there breaks to the basket, all of a sudden you end up with a 3-on-2, and you can score layups that way.
Yeah.
If they can do that without getting erased, they can win this ball game.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And let's say something real quick about our sponsors, like the Vitamin Shop, Olive Branch in Oxford, Mississippi. 2 locations, open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. Gateway Tire and Service Centers, they go the distance for their customers in the communities where they are. And think about it, folks, this time of year, houseindustriesinc.com on our website. All of our great sponsors, you can find them on our website at sidelines.live. Hewlett and Dunn, Tom Martin's Body Shop, Rumble Boxing Gym, Clay's Smoked Tuna. You live in the Memphis area, check them out. The mobile trucks, claysmokedtuna.com. It's the best stuff you've put in your mouth. Smoked chicken salad, smoked buffalo chicken dip, smoked salmon. If it can be smoked and made into a dip, they can do it. Look.
Does it make you high when you?
No. It is smoked tuna, and they serve it with the club crackers. Yeah. No,
take that fish and stick.
Yeah, I wish. I mean, but no, it is great stuff. Clay smoked tuna all over the Memphis area. The mobile truck, they cater and deliver anywhere. Let's do this real quick. Franz Beard, GatorbaitMedia.com. Check him out Monday through Thursday night, sometimes Fridays on the Buddy Martin Show. Putting out great content. Kevin Scarbinsky, the Birmingham lead, Scarbo Knows, Hall of Fame basketball writer in Birmingham. And what's your Twitter handle, Kevin?
At Kevin Scarbinsky. Simple enough.
Twix. Do we call it Twix now? And
I like that.
Kevin has a mobile, nonstop newspaper going on social media. He puts out a lot of really relevant stuff. And Kevin, let's do this again next Monday. Love having you on. Tommy, how do they follow you? I know you've got Pack Productions, but you're going bass fishing for a few days, but you're not going to be out of touch. I know that. Is he there?
No.
Tommy
I'm
froze
going
up.
down
Tommy-
to Santee,
okay.
Lake Santee,
Lake. You're going to Lake Santee in North
Can you hear me?
Carolina?
South Carolina, buddy.
Yeah. South Carolina. That's right.
Right outside Charlotte. Yeah, right outside Charleston. Yeah, going down to do some bass fishing with my brother for a couple of days. But you can follow me. My production company's Pack 30 Productions, and they do a lot of video work and production work and talent and hosting work. And great being on with you guys. I was so fired up to talk about NC State today, man. I barely slept last night. I got to tell you. So.
Hey,
Go
look,
to hell,
we're-
Caroline, Devils and Duke next in line. All the way for NC State.
I love it. Listen, hey, Mr. Wolf needs to be on the show. Let's do it again next Monday. This is it for SEC Sidelines Sports Network and SECU for the day. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a blessed day, everybody. Thanks for watching.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.